Welcome back, everyone. Today's deep dive is going to be fascinating, I think. We're looking at the relationship between money and happiness.
Okay.
And, you guys sent in a YouTube interview with Dr. Sana Sajan.
Yeah, Dr. Sajan, she's really something else. She's
Yeah.
a medical doctor, philanthropist, entrepreneur, and artist,
Wow.
and director at the Danube Group.
So she's a real multi-hyphenate, as they say these days.
That's right. Yeah.
But here's the really interesting thing. She almost became a monk.
Yeah, she actually describes herself as Sufi.
Really?
Yeah, and even calls herself a monk who didn't sell her Ferrari.
Okay, that's interesting. So right away, that kind of sets the stage for a different perspective on money and happiness, right? It's not about rejecting wealth, but approaching it with a different mindset.
Yeah, a sense of mindfulness and balance, I think is what she would say.
So I'm curious, how does this Sufi mindset, as she calls it, actually play out in her life? Like, does she just not accumulate wealth?
Yeah.
Or is it more about how she uses it?
It seems to be more about intention and purpose.
Mm-hmm.
She doesn't see wealth as an end in itself,
Right.
but as a tool for creating a fulfilling life for herself and helping others. And this actually leads us to one of her key principles, the power of perspective.
Okay, so let's break this down. What does she mean by the power of perspective, and how does that relate to money and happiness?
Well, she's incredibly positive,
Yeah.
and she focuses on reframing have to into get to.
Okay.
So, for example, she sees going to the gym not as a chore, but as a chance to take care of her health.
Oh, that's an interesting way to look at it. I never thought about gym time that way.
It's a small shift in mindset,
Yeah.
but it can have a big impact, and this positive perspective also influences her leadership style.
From the interview, it seems like she leads with a lot of empathy,
Absolutely.
which makes sense given her background in medicine and her philanthropic work.
Yeah, she prioritizes understanding her team's challenges and fostering open communication. But she's also not afraid to make tough decisions when necessary.
Oh.
Yeah, she actually has a 3 chances rule for underperforming team members.
So it's kind of like she gives them support and helps them figure things out. But if they don't step up,
It's time to move on.
time to move on.
Okay.
Interesting. So her approach really contrasts with that fire fast mentality we see in some businesses today.
Yeah, for sure.
I wonder, could that approach lead to complacency in some cases?
That's a good question.
It's a more patient and understanding approach,
Yeah.
but it requires a lot of trust and accountability.
Right.
So maybe it works best in environments where collaboration and individual growth are highly valued.
I think that's a good point.
Yeah.
Oh, and actually, Dr. Sajan credits motherhood with deepening her empathy and understanding of individual differences.
Really?
Yeah.
She mentions that becoming a mother has made her a better leader.
Yeah. She says it's forced her to understand and appreciate the unique needs of each person,
Wow.
which, ties back into her ability to get the best out of her team.
Right, recognizing their strengths and weaknesses.
Exactly.
So motherhood really is like a masterclass in empathy
It can be.
and understanding different personalities, but you don't have to be a parent to cultivate those skills, right?
Well, absolutely not.
Yeah.
These are valuable skills in any relationship,
Yeah,
whether it's with colleagues, friends, or family.
that's true. And speaking of overcoming challenges, Dr. Sajan shared a powerful story about bison.
Oh, yeah.
She talked about how bison face snowstorms head on, using it as a metaphor for tackling challenges directly.
Right.
I remember her describing how she handled her father's health emergency with that same cool-headed approach.
Yeah, it's a perfect example of putting that bison mentality into practice.
Mm-hmm.
She didn't get overwhelmed by fear.
Right.
She just confronted the problem and took action.
So this leads us to another fascinating point from the interview.
Okay.
Dr. Sajan's belief that charity is a selfish act.
Yeah.
I have to admit, when I first heard that, I was a little taken aback.
It does sound counterintuitive,
Yeah.
but when you dig into her TED Talk on this topic,
Yeah.
it starts to make sense.
Yeah.
She's referring to the joy and personal fulfillment we get from helping others.
So it's about recognizing that doing good for others often makes us feel good as well.
Exactly. And there's actually a growing body of research that supports this idea.
Really?
Yeah, altruistic behavior can trigger the release of endorphins and other feel-good chemicals in our brains.
So we're actually wired to experience pleasure from helping others. That's pretty amazing.
It is. And it really reinforces Dr. Sage's point that we should embrace that selfishness and actively seek out opportunities to give back. And she certainly walks the walk.
Yeah.
Not only does she lead this massive philanthropic organization, But she also chooses to celebrate unsung heroes in her life.
Oh, yeah, like her nanny.
Exactly.
That's really moving.
Yeah.
It makes you think about the unsung heroes in your own life and how important it is to appreciate them. It all ties back to her emphasis on relationships and community.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And her actions really speak volumes about her values
Yeah.
and the importance she places on recognizing everyone's contributions.
Yeah, I think she's given us a lot to think about
She
and a lot to unpack in terms of money, happiness, leadership, and personal growth.
For sure.
We're going to take a quick break and then we'll come back and dive into some of these ideas in more detail.
Sounds good. It's pretty inspiring to see someone like Dr. Sajan who gives back so much.
Yeah.
But it makes you wonder how she balances everything.
Right.
She's a doctor, businesswoman, philanthropist, wife, and a mother.
Yeah. I mean, she even jokes about her husband asking, which sauna am I meeting today?
Right.
It's funny, but it also highlights this challenge a lot of us face,
Sure.
How do you manage all the different parts of your life without getting overwhelmed?
Yeah, well, Dr. Sajan seems to have figured it out.
Mm-hmm.
She talks about wearing different hats,
Uh-huh.
but when she's wearing one, she's fully focused on that role.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Could you give an example of what you mean?
Sure. Like she talks about painting.
Okay.
When she's in her art studio, she's completely immersed in that creative process.
Right.
But then when it's time to shift gears, whether it's spending time with her family or going to work, she intentionally changes her focus.
So it's like she's compartmentalizing, but in a healthy way.
Exactly.
She's not letting one role bleed into another so she can be more present and effective in each moment.
Right. And this intentionality also applies to her scheduling.
Hmm.
She's big on planning her days carefully,
Yeah.
making time for both work and family, and prioritizing self-care.
She really emphasizes the importance of routine, especially with sleep, diet, and exercise.
Yeah, she sees those as the foundation for everything else.
Right.
If you're not taking care of your physical and mental health, it's going to be tough to excel in other areas of life.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
You can't pour from an empty cup, as they say.
Exactly. And this focus on balance, I think that's one of the most valuable takeaways from Dr. Sajan's interview.
Yeah.
It's a good reminder that success isn't just about external goals, but also about inner harmony and well-being. What are some things you do to maintain balance in your life?
I'm definitely still working on it.
Sure.
But one thing that helps me is setting boundaries between work and personal time. I also try to exercise regularly and make time for things that bring me joy, like reading and being in nature.
I think that's so important.
It's easy to get caught up in the daily grind and forget to prioritize those things.
Absolutely. And we don't have to be perfect about it either.
True.
Dr. Sajan admits that she also has moments of stress and frustration, just like everyone else.
Yeah. But it's interesting how she handles those tough moments.
Yeah.
She seems to stay so calm and rational, even under pressure.
Remember her story about her father's medical emergency?
Yeah.
She was obviously worried, but she didn't let her emotions take over.
Right.
She thought things through, took all the necessary steps, and solved the problem.
It's like she embodies that bison mentality she talked about.
Yeah.
Facing those difficult situations head on.
With courage and resilience.
It's a skill we can all develop with practice, right?
Absolutely. The more we work on staying calm under pressure, the stronger that skill becomes. It's like working a muscle.
I love that analogy. It's not about suppressing our emotions, but learning to manage them in a healthy way.
Right. And it's remembering that challenges are unavoidable.
Yeah.
As Dr. Sajan says, the shortest way out of a storm is to go through it.
I love that quote.
Yeah.
It reminds us to face our problems head on instead of trying to avoid them.
Yeah.
And to trust that we have the strength to overcome any obstacle.
And speaking of facing challenges, Dr. Sajan is working on a really inspiring project.
Right.
She's creating a school for underprivileged children.
Which connects back to her whole philosophy of selfish giving.
Yes,
right?
exactly.
It's about making a tangible difference in the world, but also experiencing that personal fulfillment.
Yeah, she's definitely not just talking the talk, but walking the walk, putting her values into action,
Yeah.
and using her resources to make the world better.
It's truly inspiring. It makes you wonder, what are some small acts of giving we can all do to make a difference in our communities?
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be some big grand gesture or anything.
Right.
It could be as simple as volunteering at a local soup kitchen
Mhm.
or
Donating to a cause you believe in, or even just helping out a neighbor in need.
absolutely. The key is to approach it with that same spirit of joy and generosity that Dr. Sajan has.
Yeah.
It's not about feeling obligated.
Right.
It's about wanting to make a difference.
It's about recognizing that we're all connected and that even small acts of kindness can have a ripple effect. What I find so inspiring about Dr. Sajan is that she doesn't just talk about these things, she lives them.
Yeah,
It's evident in her career, her philanthropy, her personal life.
that's true. She's really aligned her values with her actions.
Right.
And that's something we can all aspire to, I think.
For sure.
This deep dive into her interview has really given us a lot to think about
It
in
has.
terms of money,
Yeah.
happiness,
Yeah.
leadership, personal growth.
It really has. She's challenged our assumptions about what it means to be successful
Yeah.
and reminded us that true fulfillment comes from finding balance in all areas of our lives.
And that we all have the power to make a positive impact,
Yeah.
regardless of our circumstances.
It's about finding those small opportunities to give back and experience the joy that comes from helping others.
Exactly.
Well, I think we've covered a lot of ground today. It's been a really insightful and inspiring conversation.
It has. I hope it encourages everyone to continue exploring these ideas.
Yeah.
And find ways to apply them in their own lives.
Because ultimately, the most valuable knowledge is the kind we can actually put into practice.
Absolutely.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, we want to leave you with one final thought. Dr. Sajan is working hard to create a school for underprivileged children.
Right.
So we ask you, what small act of giving can you do today to make a difference in your own community?